The GenX experiment by Ginny Jones. You ever stop and wonder if GenX wasn't forgotten at all? What if we were observed? Not in a shadowy sci-fi way, but in the quiet structural sense. The way systems learn by watching what people tolerate, adapt to, and survive without protest. People talk about generational curses like they're mystical or inherited through blood. But most curses aren't magical. They're unfinished work. They're lessons one generation didn't have the time, language, or support to fully process, handed forward to the next. The real curse isn't trauma itself. It's distraction. Somewhere along the way, it became clear that control doesn't require force. It requires exhaustion. Keep people busy. Keep them scrambling. Keep their attention fragmented and their nervous systems overloaded. A distracted population doesn't organize. It reacts. Gen X grew up at a hinge point. We were raised by baby boomers, many of whom were themselves reacting to the emotional restraint and obedience of the silent generation. Each generation was trying to correct what came before it, often without realizing what it was carrying forward. We inherited rigidity, skepticism, and silence, but also learned to question authority, often quietly. We were taught independence early, sometimes out of necessity, and learned to normalize dysfunction because stopping to examine it wasn't an option. We didn't suddenly wake up to this later in life. Many of us saw it in our teens. What we lacked wasn't awareness. It was a shared language, and a culture willing to listen. We were the bridge between analog and digital, between uninterrupted thought and constant interruption. Television trained us to expect breaks in attention. News trained us to live in low-grade fear. The internet finished the job, turning distraction into a business model. Gen X adapted, and the system learned from that adaptation. What keeps people compliant? What keeps them scrolling? What keeps them tired but functional? By the time millennials and Gen Z arrived, distraction wasn't creeping in. It was the environment. They crave authenticity, but everything around them is performative. They feel something is wrong, but often lack the historical context to name it. Every generation believes the one before it failed. In truth, each is responding to wounds it didn't create, while passing forward the ones it couldn't fully heal. That's the loop. And maybe that's where Gen X still matters. Not because we're wiser, but because we remember a world before constant interruption. Because many of us taught our children to observe systems, speak up, and face opposition, instead of suppressing dissent for the sake of comfort or false harmony. The experiment only works if it remains unnamed. Awareness disrupts it. Attention weakens it. Context breaks the spell. If distraction is the curse, then focus is the cure. And choosing to really see, to think instead of react, might be the most rebellious act left.